Welcome back, everyone, to the Barely News Crew. I'm your host here, as always, Alexis, and I am joined by Peter, and we have a very great announcement. This is going to be the first installment of something new, yet not so original, but, you know, how our industry is. We are going to announce the Marvel Project, which is in similar fashion that we did a couple months back, called the Star Wars Project. We are going to recap all 12 MCU movies in preparation for Captain America Civil War. We're going to start with the first movie, Iron Man. Iron Man was released in 2008 and was directed by Jon Favreau and introduced the world Robert Downey Jr.'s comeback role as Tony Stark. As a movie, or maybe even as a film, this movie is pretty damn great for a lot of different reasons. First of all, the casting in this movie is pretty great, and you have to start off with Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, or maybe Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr., whichever way you want to reference that.
You'd be hard pressed to find better casting than Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. I don't think the comics he was as Robert Downey Jr.-ish. I think he was a little bit more serious.
Right.
But he really came in and he said, like, all right, this is who the character is. It really reinvented it a bit and really made it his own.
Yeah, there are different qualities in Tony Stark in these movies. I think I saw a special feature on the Blu-ray disc that they really pulled from basically every single iteration of Iron Man. The alcoholism, the playboy philanthropist part of it. I mean, there are so many different iterations of Tony Stark that have been in the comic books that they really pulled together in this one. And I really got to say that Tony's performance is just maybe even effortlessly crafted. And I really have to start with the opening scene in this movie. Accomplishes so many things. It really sets the tone, which is extremely important going forward.
Yeah.
And I mean, how can you not smile? What's the song? I know it's AC/DC, right? But what's the song that's playing? Is it Back in Black? Is that what it is?
I think that's the one
that's the one that's playing, and then he's just taking a tour with the
Afghanistan
and then
troops.
I mean, that whole scene before it starts going to shit and everything is just... It really just introduces you and it eases you in to what this movie is going to be. And the dialogue for Tony has always been on par. Like, good God, you're a woman. I mean, seriously.
What I really love for all these Marvel movies, and it really started with Tony Stark and Iron Man, is that it's always been about the characters.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, although that may be a detriment to the villains.
Right.
But it's always been about the main character and who they are. They may be heroes, but they're not exactly nice.
No, not really.
And especially Tony Stark. He's pretty much an a-hole.
The starting point for this cinematic universe is Stark Industries being a weapons manufacturer.
Yeah.
Which is very different than what it ends up ultimately being. And Tony is okay with that. In fact, he's profiteering. He does not bat an eye. He is who he is and doesn't care at all. And it's not until he's captured. By the way, that whole sequence of him being captured and you see the transformation.
That's easily the best part of the film.
My God, yeah.
It's incredible. I love it.
It's honest for me, look, and I will say this off the bat. Iron Man I would probably contest, is the best comic book origin story. I would say that.
Origin?
Yeah, I mean, because it is an origin story. I mean, and that sequence that you pointed out to where he's in that cave and he understands that his chances of getting out alive are practically none.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating to see when he makes the switch to, okay, I know how to get out of here and I'm going to build a suit. You get the intelligence that he has by making an Iron Man suit, as crude as it was, but out of half-assed materials.
I love later in the movie when he's screaming, Tony Stark made it in a cave with scrap metal.
Right,
when they try to replicate the little thing. I thought that was hilarious.
The Stark reactor,
the Stark
arc
reactor.
Yeah,
the arc reactor. And that really, it goes a long way to show you this guy's intelligence. And it's really incredible. And I think it really comes down again to Robert Downey Jr. and just how darn charismatic he is. This is not a likable guy.
No, he isn't.
At all. Like, even when he's at his best.
Right.
He's kind of unlikable.
By everyone, really.
Yeah.
Even the people who are closest to him have a lot of gripes with him.
I mean, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's smart, good-looking, gets everything he wants.
Yeah.
But you still feel for this character.
You do, yeah. And the movie makes that happen.
Deep down, he wants to do good. And just that transformation from this selfish asshole into someone who's brought down a level and sees the world a bit differently. And he says, I need to change it for the better.
Right.
And his relationship with Jensen.
Mm-hmm.
I love it so much.
It's amazing. It truly is. And Jensen is kind of the, what's it called? The plot device in a sense. Not against all the characters. He's a great character. But he's the one that sets off the events that, you know what, Tony realizes, don't waste your life.
When he's dying.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, don't waste your life.
Yeah.
And to me, every time, like, he says that, like, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe flashes before my eyes.
It
like,
does,
everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because the entire universe pretty much is him striving to do right by the world.
Exactly.
And even though he fails time and time again, he never gives up. And he wants to do good. Even the upcoming Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
You may disagree with him.
Right.
But his heart is always in the right place.
That's true.
And that's what makes great characters, I think. And that's
I mean, by the time we even get to Civil War, he's like, maybe arguably a completely different character.
And I love it because it's the same character, but you see growth
and evolution, if you will. As with all of the other characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What do we make of the Iron Man suit? The one with the paint job and the hot rod red and everything. I really love
the first suit, the first Iron Man iteration of the suit. I remember loving it. And at the time, people were like, "It's pretty realistic."
It is, yeah.
Like you could see some like super smart guy somewhere,
unlike
making it.
I think people expected it to be like a silly comic book, like rip out of it, but it did look realistic.
It was very well done. The way it like comes together, almost like off an automobile assembly line. It was just badass. It was cool.
What also works really well here is Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts.
They have the best relationship of maybe any superhero movie.
The thing is, I wouldn't say it's that extraordinary, but their chemistry is pretty on point. Even from all of the Iron Man movies, the Avengers movies, their relationship grows as the movies go along. But right here, they're not really like an actual relationship yet. They're more of a boss employee kind of, maybe close friends kind of thing. But even from this instance, you see that there's a genuine like of each other.
What you said really hit the nail on the head. The chemistry is amazing between them. The fact that relationship as well evolves like the characters.
Right.
You know, they don't always keep that, you know, sort of boss, you know, cutesy relationship. They get together. They have hard times.
Terrence Howard as Cody.
I liked of him what I did see.
I did too.
You know, like he did have chemistry with Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those changes when he did change, when he didn't come back.
Yeah.
It wasn't something where I'm like, oh, like, they should have, like, I'm sad about it.
He was serviceable.
Much for him to do. Yeah.
Is what he was. And you bought into the relationship, but it's not like him being recasted in the next movie that it changed anything, really. In fact, perhaps Don Cheadle had brought the exact same that he did that Terrence Howard did to Rhodey.
I'll be honest, because I haven't seen the first Iron Man in a long time, and I got kind of like, oh yeah,
you forgot.
I forgot.
Yeah, you
like
forget.
I forgot it wasn't Don Cheadle.
I really do want to give this movie credit. I know that we're not going to get into the villain. Obadiah Stane is the main villain here, and I gotta say, watching this movie again after a while, and knowing how the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have gone. I think Obadiah may be one of the better villains.
He is one of the better ones, and I'm surprised they haven't touched on him before, like in the future Marvel films, because they do dive into the past a lot.
Right.
And he was supposed to be like Howard Stark's sort of best friend, you know, partner.
And he's never mentioned
again. So it's a little weird to me.
I mean, Obadiah Stane is a not too particularly interesting character, but you get his motivations and you get where he's coming from and you get that who he is. And I gotta say, Jeff Bridges owns this performance.
I think Marvel gets away with their villains for the most part, just because they always get someone A-list, someone charismatic, someone you want to see like just be a villain.
No, but Jeff Bridges wasn't just like phoning it in.
No, he wasn't phoning it in either. But I mean his reasoning for like turning on Tony, it was never really given. It's just like he's just a shitty guy, you know?
I think that was, for me it was enough. I mean, I can kind of tell that he's never really liked Tony, and he was envious how he had the company, and then Tony took it away from him, and then when he saw he had the right opportunity, it makes perfect sense.
It was enough, but it wasn't like anything to write home about.
It wasn't anything Shakespearean, like Hillary Clinton's Wall Street speeches.
Because this is a superhero movie talking about the action. What I noticed rewatching all of the Phase 1 films was that there's not a lot of action.
And I like that about it.
I really liked it.
Because I'll tell you this, and I'll say this for Iron Man, for Thor, Incredible Hulk, and certainly Captain America, there is, and I know that some people may kind of be surprised me saying this, but there is an indie-like quality to these movies in the sense that they're not like the end-all, to-all of a huge event that's happening. When you look at Phase 2, but virtually every single movie is basically, it's the end of the world. But in these films, Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, they're isolated incidents.
Yeah.
And there's a level of artistry and authenticity that I feel that is being expressed through all of these movies, especially in this one.
Is it maybe just because the times we live in now, and every movie is this gigantic, schlocky, like, explosions and everything? And, like, back then it wasn't like that.
No, but you're right when you say that the action is very restrained.
Yeah, but it's good action as well.
It
is. And you never feel bored in this film.
No, you do not. There's not one second of this movie that I felt bored. And even the action, which, I mean, the more you pull back, the more emotion you put into the actual conflict at hand.
There's about 3 different action scenes, I would say. The first was him escaping, which I love. I said, but that was my favorite part of the film, was him working with Jensen to escape and all that. The second, I think, was him when he was getting pissed off hearing about his weapons being used to terrorize villages.
Yeah. And then he goes
and destroys it. I love that as well. Amazing. It was great. And then the last part, fighting Obadiah Stane, the Ironmonger or whatever. That was great too, but it wasn't this big, like, throwing through like 5 different buildings and stuff like that. It was a very small, restrained fight. And it kept it personal. It kind of reminds me of the original Star Wars films, where there's not a lot of sword fights, lightsaber fights.
There's only one, dude.
There was like... no, but like, I'm saying for the whole trilogy.
Well, that's right, yeah.
Like, it was one every so often, and it was always meaning behind it. You know?
Yeah, they pulled back, basically because of the technology of their time, but there was more meaning put into it. I took a glance at the extended sequences that they filmed for this movie. And I gotta tell you, I gotta commend it to Jon Favreau. The editing in this movie is impeccable.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you that the editing, I don't usually notice in a lot of movies, but this one you just can't not think about it because of not only the pacing, not only how well it flows, but I think you get an extra perspective when you look at the extended sequences. For me, there was a lot of shit that was needless and it was kind of going on a long time, but every scene in this movie feels like it's needed and it has a purpose. And when you can say that about a film, it's done its job.
Iron Man is one of those that I would consider like the perfect superhero film.
Oh yeah.
Or popcorn film. Because it does everything you want. It, like you said, it's edited great at a nice brisk pace. You have characters you care about, action you care about. It's fun. It's funny.
Yeah.
Everything you want out of a film, and somewhat emotional as well. Like, you care about the characters and Tony Stark and his confliction inside. Everything going on in this movie comes together perfectly, and it's just a great, fun film.
Right. What do we make of Clark Gregg's little role? Phil Coulson introducing S.H.I.E.L.D.
I remember that.
Before we go into the post-end credit scene.
I you know what? I never, when the movie first came out, I never saw the post-end credit scene.
I think most people didn't know there was one.
Back then they didn't have it. So, like, the movie's over, you get up and you walk out. Yeah. I didn't know about it until the end of The Incredible Hulk. Like, I don't know how, like, farther down the road that movie came out. Yeah. But I didn't know about that they were connecting them until then. I knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. So when he said, just call it S.H.I.E.L.D., I was a kid, I started geeking out. Like, oh, S.H.I.E.L.D., like... That's cool, but I didn't start thinking, like, oh, they're going to connect this and
all
that
the movies and make them one thing.
I just thought it was a cute little nod.
So, I mean, and then, Phil Coulson here obviously is in the movie to introduce S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything, but I think the big moment that basically said to the world, hey, by the way, all these movies, they're going to be in one universe. Happened at the end of the credits where you see Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury at Tony Stark's house, and it basically says, you've become part of a bigger universe, you just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And thus we transition to the part where this movie truly, in a sense, transformed the industry.
Yeah. I'm so mad at myself now, because I could just imagine if I, for some reason, would have said, like, well, let's just wait. You know, maybe there was too crowded. Like, let's wait till everyone leaves, and then I happened to see it. Like, little old me, I don't know how old I was. It was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So however old I was back then, I would have geeked the hell out. Like, I would have thrown up from nerdness. Like, I really would have. Because back then, that was inconceivable.
It is. It
really was. Yeah. Like, no one would have thought anything like that could have happened today. Like, that's why I say people today are really spoiled. Like, you get such great, awesome superhero and popcorn films. Like, just film in general. There's a lot of great movies that come out every year. Back then, you know, we get a Daredevil every once in a while with Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
You know, I ate that shit up. That's all I had. But
no, in so many ways, that scene, and then, of course, the movie just set the tone for all the movies going forward. It really was coming out of the gate with a bang. This movie was a bang. It is a great movie for all of the reasons that we have already told you, and it changed it because of what it set up in this movie and going forward.
And I recently heard a quote by Kevin Feige, and, you know, comparing the beginning of the Marvel universe to the DC movie universe. And he said, one thing I think that's different is that for Marvel, nothing was guaranteed. Every movie had to be a hit. Everything had to make its mark. It had to work, or else the whole thing would fall apart. There was no guarantee this was going to happen. And now, you know, that's not the case. That's why I feel a lot of movie companies are kind of tripping over themselves. They just assume that everything's going to work out and we can plan 20 movies, and then they don't really put in the effort. And you
use that with quote unquote, right? Because no one's really making a plan. I mean, I can't really defend their use of the word plan. There's only one company in my view that's done that to excellence, and that's Marvel. They've had a plan and they've carried it out. They had their vision.
But the reason it worked, because they said each movie, they treated it as if this is the end all be all. As if this movie doesn't work, the whole thing falls apart.
It does, yeah.
And it really worked for them. A lot of movie companies, I think, take for granted nowadays when they try to start these big movie universes. But after seeing some of the mistakes that certain movies have made, they don't need to do the exact same thing, but just look at, you know, everything needs to work. We need to stay true to the characters, and we have to make a great film first, and that's how we'll get this thing to work. The way it's worked for Marvel.
At the end of this limited series, Marvel Project, we're going to tell you our top 3 favorite Marvel movies. The chances of this movie being in our top 3, are, for me anyway, is pretty good. At the end of it.
Very good.
Very good. I mean, it definitely you have to consider it to be in your top 3 Marvel films. And by the way, there are a lot of good Marvel movies to talk about. I mean, honestly.
I'll say great.
Yeah, all of them
all of them, I would say, are at least okay.
Or decent. Yeah.
Decent.
I love this movie, and it's one of these movies that it's rare, but it's one of these movies that every time I watch it, it gets better for me.
Yeah, I would say that.
And those are truly one of the most special movies you'll ever find. So, thanks, Peter. Thanks for watching this first installment of our Marvel project. Congratulations, I guess. And until next time, I'm your host here as always, Alexis. This is a Barely News Crew, the place for all things movie news and reviews.